Lyra had always been different. From the moment she had taken her first steps on Zelara, the planet of glowing forests and towering crystal cities, she had stood out. Her bioluminescent markings pulsed in unusual patterns when she was excited or upset, and her sharp mind seemed to race ahead of everyone else's. People often whispered that she was too much to love, though none of them said it to her face. The words followed her like shadows, persistent and heavy, coloring the way others saw her. She had learned to walk through life with a calm exterior. But inside, there was a storm of frustration, sadness, and longing. Zelara was a planet of order and elegance. Its people valued harmony and subtlety, praising those who fit neatly into the social patterns. Lyra's brilliance often scared them. She spoke quickly, her ideas leaping like sparks from one thought to the next, and she had a habit of questioning traditions that most Xelarians held sacred. She had tried to adjust herself, tried to temper her enthusiasm and soften her edge, but it always felt like she was dimming the very fire that made her alive. Her creations, her inventions, her daring explorations, none of it was enough to make her feel accepted. Today, as she walked along the floating walkways of the capital city, the neon glow of the biocrystals illuminating her path, Lyra felt a familiar pang of isolation. The wind carried the faint scent of ionized energy from the labs below, and she breathed it in, letting it steady her nerves. She had a meeting with the council, the body that governed Zelara, about her latest project. A device that could stabilize energy storms in the planet's atmosphere. It was a breakthrough, one that could save countless lives. But she already knew the council would focus on her approach rather than her achievement. They would see the risk, the boldness, the deviation from their established methods, and not the potential. As she entered the chamber, the cold, metallic room with its soft hum of machinery, she saw the familiar faces of the council members. They were seated in a semicircle, their robes reflecting the ambient light. Faces neutral. She nodded politely, holding her head high, despite the knot of nerves in her stomach. "Lyra," one of them said, her tone polite but distant. "We understand you have a new proposal." "Yes," Lyra replied, her voice firm. "The device can predict and contain energy storms before they reach populated areas. I've run simulations, and the results are consistent." The council members exchanged glances. "It is ambitious," another said, choosing his words carefully. "Perhaps too ambitious. You know how delicate the balance of our atmospheric systems is. Any miscalculation could be catastrophic." Lyra clenched her fists slightly. She had expected this. "I am aware," she said evenly. "That is why I have accounted for multiple contingencies. My design is based on the latest energy modulation principles. It will save lives." The oldest member leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Lyra, you are brilliant. But sometimes, your brilliance is reckless. We must think of the greater good, the harmony of our people. Reckless. Too much." Lyra felt the familiar ache in her chest. She had grown used to these words, the polite rejection that always seemed to accompany her ideas. She wanted to tell them that her too much was not a flaw, but a gift. She wanted someone to see her as she was, not as a threat or a disruption. But she remained silent, bowing slightly before the council. After the meeting, she retreated to her private lab. The lab was a chaos of wires, glowing screens, and half-finished inventions. But to her, it was a sanctuary. Here, she could create without judgment, experiment without restriction. She let her fingers trace over the control panels, feeling the hum of energy beneath her touch. A message alert blinked on one of the screens. It was from Earth. Humans. They had made contact with Zelara 2 months ago, and while most Zelarians were cautious, Lyra had been fascinated. Humans were unpredictable, curious, and fearless in ways that mirrored her own spirit. She opened the message, A formal greeting from a human envoy named Captain Elias Harper. He requested a meeting to discuss collaboration on energy research. Curiosity sparked within her. Humans had a reputation for seeing value where Zilarians did not. Perhaps he could understand her, in a way her own people never had. She responded with cautious enthusiasm, arranging a meeting at the observation deck overlooking the city. When the day arrived, Lyra's pulse quickened. The observation deck was a sleek structure of glass and metal, suspended high above the glowing city. She arrived early, pacing along the edge, her markings flickering with nervous energy. Elias Harper appeared shortly after. He was tall, with a calm presence and eyes that seemed to take in everything without judgment. He greeted her with a warm smile. "Lyra," he said, his voice friendly. "It's an honor to meet you. I've heard of your work." She blinked. Unlike the council, he did not hesitate, did not doubt her. He simply acknowledged her accomplishments. It was a small thing, but it sent a ripple of relief through her. They began to talk, sharing ideas about energy stabilization and atmospheric technology. Lyra found herself explaining concepts she rarely shared with anyone outside her lab. And Elias listened intently, asking thoughtful questions. He did not seem intimidated by her intensity or distracted by her erratic thought patterns. He valued them. Hours passed, and the sun of Zilara began to set, casting long, golden beams through the crystalline city. Lyra realized she had been laughing a sound rare and genuine at a joke he made about human bureaucracy versus Zelaran protocol. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen, understood, and appreciated. As they parted that evening, Elias said, "You have a way of seeing the world that's extraordinary. I hope we can work together again." Lyra watched him leave, her heart lighter than it had been in years. She knew not everyone would ever accept her, but for the first time, she felt that someone could. That realization settled in her chest, a warmth that chased away some of the loneliness she had carried for so long. She returned to her lab, her fingers tracing the controls absent-mindedly. Outside, the city glowed, alive with lights and energy. Inside, she felt a spark ignite, a promise of possibilities. Perhaps being too much was not a curse. Perhaps it was the very thing that would lead her to someone who could see her as perfect. And for the first time, Lyra allowed herself to believe it. The next morning, Lyra returned to her lab with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. The message from Captain Elias Harper was clear. He wanted to visit her lab and see her experiments firsthand. While most Zilarians would have considered it unusual for an outsider to enter their private workspace, Lyra welcomed it. She had long felt confined by the cautious nature of her people, and the idea of showing someone who understood her work excited her. By mid-morning, Elias arrived in his sleek human ship, a compact vessel that hummed softly as it landed near the lab's entrance. The humans had a way of moving through the world that was confident without arrogance, and Elias carried that air with him. Lyra met him at the door, her bioluminescent patterns glowing brighter than usual, a reflection of her nervous energy. "Welcome," she said, gesturing toward the lab. "I hope you don't mind the chaos." Elias smiled, stepping inside. "Not at all. I find organized chaos far more interesting than sterile perfection." His eyes scanned the room, taking in the intricate machines, wires, and glowing screens. "Everything here has a purpose. I can see it. I can see it. I can see it." Lyra felt a small spark of pride. Most Zilarians might have dismissed the lab as disorderly, but he recognized the method in her madness. She began to guide him through her latest project, a device designed to stabilize the planet's energy storms. It was a complex system of energy conduits, modulation crystals, and predictive algorithms. As she explained the intricate mechanisms, Elias listened intently, asking questions that showed not only his understanding, but also genuine curiosity. "So, the energy flows through these conduits," And the crystals adjust the frequency to prevent destabilization? He asked. Yes, Lyra replied, impressed by his quick grasp. And the algorithms predict fluctuations, allowing the system to adapt before a storm becomes dangerous. He nodded thoughtfully. It's brilliant. And risky, I imagine? Risk is unavoidable in innovation, Lyra said, her voice steady but her hands betraying a slight tremble as she adjusted a delicate crystal. The risk is what makes it effective. The Council fails to see that. Elias frowned slightly. I've noticed that humans sometimes have a better ability to appreciate what others dismiss. Perhaps that's why I'm drawn to this work, and to those who create it. The words made Lyra pause. She wasn't used to compliments that carried weight beyond polite acknowledgement. Thank you, she said softly. They spent hours experimenting, adjusting parameters, and discussing theoretical applications. Lyra found herself explaining ideas she had never shared, ideas she had considered too radical for Xelaran society. Elias did not judge. He only encouraged her to explore further, to push boundaries. The contrast between his openness and the Council's caution made her realize how stifling her society could be, and how liberating it was to have someone see her without fear or doubt. As the day turned into evening, the lab's lights reflected off the crystalline walls, casting intricate patterns across the floor. Lyra and Elias paused to look out the window at the glowing city below. The human ship had landed in the city's central hub, where Xelarians moved through their orderly routines, unaware of the small revolution unfolding in a hidden lab. You know, Elias said, breaking the silence. Your work could change Xelara. If you're allowed to implement it fully, it could save lives and make the atmosphere more stable for generations. Lyra's heart lifted, but she felt the weight of her people's skepticism pressing down. The Council will resist, she admitted. They fear what they don't understand. They fear me. Elias looked at her, his eyes steady and unwavering. Fear is different from judgment. They may resist now, but what you've created speaks for itself. Sometimes, it just takes the right perspective to see it. For the first time in years, Lyra allowed herself to hope. Perhaps she didn't need the approval of everyone, only someone willing to see beyond appearances. Their conversation was interrupted by an alert from her lab's monitoring system. An unusual surge of energy was detected in the northern sector of Xelara. Lyra frowned, analyzing the data. An energy spike. It's approaching one of the residential zones. If it escalates, it could become a storm. Elias glanced at the readings. Do you want my help? Of course, Lyra said, already moving toward her transport module. The journey through the city's outskirts was tense, the skies darkening as the energy readings increased. Lyra guided her vehicle with precision, while Elias offered suggestions and observations, showing a surprising familiarity with technical concepts despite being human. When they arrived, Lyra assessed the situation quickly. A massive surge of raw energy was building, unstable and unpredictable. Residents were evacuating, guided by emergency drones. Lyra activated her device, carefully linking the modulation crystals to the energy grid. Elias stood beside her, monitoring the readings and offering guidance. The frequency is fluctuating faster than predicted. You may need to adjust the conduits manually. Lyra nodded, her hands moving with practiced skill, recalibrating the energy flow. The surge pulsed dangerously, but with each adjustment, it began to stabilize. The device hummed louder, resonating with the energy around them. And slowly, the storm lost its intensity. When the last spike dissipated, Lyra exhaled, her chest heaving. Elias clapped her on the shoulder, a wide smile on his face. You did it. You saved them all. She blinked, trying to process the validation she had just received. In her world, success was often met with caution or critique, never celebration. Elias's simple acknowledgement felt revolutionary. As they returned to the lab, Lyra felt a shift within herself. She realized that being too much was not a flaw. It was the source of her strength. Her boldness, her intensity, and her willingness to challenge norms had made the difference today. And Elias, with his human perspective, had recognized that strength instead of fearing it. Later, as the city lights glimmered beneath them, Elias spoke again. "You have a gift, Lyra. One that shouldn't be hidden or restrained. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." Lyra smiled faintly, a warmth spreading through her chest. For the first time, she felt truly seen. She had spent so long hiding her true self, afraid of rejection and judgment. But with Elias, she felt understood, respected, and appreciated. It was a feeling she had almost forgotten could exist. That night, Lyra returned to her lab, her mind racing with possibilities. She began planning new experiments, thinking of ways to improve her device and expand its applications. The energy spike had been a small crisis, but it had also been a revelation. With Elias's support, she felt capable of achieving more than she had ever dared to imagine. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet hope began to grow. Perhaps one day, she would not only be accepted by others, but celebrated for who she truly was. Perhaps being too much was exactly what the universe needed. For now, she allowed herself to bask in the rare feeling of connection and understanding. Tomorrow, she would continue her work, but tonight she had found something almost as powerful as her inventions. The knowledge that someone, at least one human, could see her as she truly was, and that was enough to make her feel perfect. The days that followed, the energy surge were filled with both excitement and tension. Lyra had proven her device could stabilize dangerous energy spikes, but the council remained skeptical. Their whispers grew louder, questioning her methods, labeling her success as fortunate rather than earned. Lyra had learned to ignore such remarks, but they still pricked at her pride. Elias, however, remained a steadfast presence, always reminding her that her courage and brilliance were the real forces behind her accomplishments. One morning, an urgent message arrived from the space station orbiting Zilara, where humans and Zilarians were collaborating on joint research. A rogue asteroid had been detected, heading on a trajectory that could impact the station in days. The news caused alarm across both species, and the council immediately convened a meeting. Lyra was summoned, as her expertise with energy modulation made her uniquely qualified to propose a plan. She entered the chamber with her usual resolve, though her pulse quickened. The council members regarded her with the same mix of curiosity and disdain she had grown accustomed to. "Lyra," the oldest member said, "you will speak, but remember that we must consider all possibilities. Recklessness will not be tolerated." "I understand," Lyra replied, her voice steady. "I have analyzed the asteroid's trajectory and developed a plan to alter it safely using a combination of Zelaron energy manipulation and human propulsion systems." The council members exchanged skeptical glances. "It is dangerous," one said. "If you miscalculate, the station could be destroyed." Elias, present as a human observer, stepped forward. "With Lyra's calculations and my team's support, the plan is achievable. We need to act quickly, and she is the best person for the job." A murmur ran through the council. Some nodded reluctantly, while others remained unconvinced. Lyra felt the familiar pressure, but she stood tall. She had faced doubt before, and this time, she had someone who believed in her abilities. Within hours, Lyra and Elias began working together on the operation. The plan was complex. They would deploy a series of energy modulators along the asteroid's path, creating a controlled gravitational influence to divert its trajectory. Lyra's device would stabilize the energy flow, while Elias and his human team would provide precision adjustments. As they prepared, Lyra noticed the tension between their teams. Zilarians were meticulous and cautious, while humans were adaptive and willing to improvise. The differences caused friction, and at times, progress slowed as misunderstandings arose. Lyra felt the familiar frustration she had experienced her entire life. The clash between innovation and caution. Elias placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Focus on what we can control," he said. "The rest is noise. Your instincts are right. Trust them." Lyra nodded, taking a deep breath. She had always relied on her intuition, and now she had someone validating it. She began directing her team, calibrating the modulators, adjusting energy conduits, and monitoring the asteroid's trajectory in real time. The asteroid moved closer, its size and speed imposing. The operation required split-second decisions, and for the first time, Lyra felt the weight of responsibility not just for herself, but for both species. Her heart raced as she activated the first series of modulators. Energy rippled outward, interacting with the asteroid's natural forces. The trajectory shifted slightly, but it was not enough. "Increase the modulation frequency," Elias suggested. "It should counteract the core fluctuations." Lyra adjusted the controls, sweat forming on her brow. The asteroid wobbled, responding to the energy field. But then a sudden surge caused the stabilizers to overload. Alarms blared. Zalarian engineers panicked, some stepping back from the console, while humans moved to assist, adapting quickly to the situation. Lyra's mind raced. She recalculated, her fingers flying over the controls, rerouting power to prevent a system failure. "I've got it," she muttered, diverting excess energy now. The modulators hummed, resonating with the asteroid. Slowly, its path began to bend, more predictably. Lyra felt a flicker of hope, but she knew it wasn't over. Every decision mattered. Every adjustment could mean success or disaster. Elias watched her, admiration clear in his eyes. "You're doing it. I knew you could." The encouragement steadied her. Lyra focused entirely on the task, ignoring the council members' anxious faces and the chaos around her. She found a rhythm, adjusting the energy flow with precision. Each movement calculated, yet instinctive. The asteroid's trajectory gradually aligned with their plan. Finally, after tense minutes that felt like hours, the asteroid passed safely by the station. Its path diverted away from both the orbiting facility and populated areas. Alarms ceased, and the teams collectively exhaled. Lyra's body trembled from exhaustion, but a triumphant smile spread across her face. Elias grinned beside her. "You did it," he said simply, as if the words could capture the enormity of her achievement. For a moment, Lyra allowed herself to bask in the victory. She had faced doubt, prejudice, and immense pressure, and she had succeeded. It was a moment of pure affirmation that her abilities, her boldness, and her willingness to embrace risk were not flaws, they were strengths. The council, while slow to praise, could not ignore the results. Some members nodded in acknowledgement, their expressions grudging but respectful. Others remained hesitant, but Lyra no longer needed universal approval. Elias's belief in her had shown her that true validation came from those who understood the value of courage and innovation. As they debriefed after the operation, Elias turned to her. "You see, Lyra, your so-called too much is exactly what the universe needed. If you had been cautious like the others, we might have failed." Lyra's markings pulsed with a soft, steady light. She realized he was right. Her intensity, her curiosity, and her refusal to conform had made the difference. For the first time, she felt completely aligned with someone who saw her not as a threat, but as an essential force for change. That evening, as she returned to her lab, the city below shimmered under the twin moons of Zalara. She felt lighter, freer, as if a heavy weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She began documenting new ideas, inspired by the success and by the human perspective Elias had shared. The blending of Zalarian precision and human adaptability opened doors she had never considered. Later, as she gazed out over the glowing city, Elias joined her on the observation deck. "You were amazing today," he said, his voice gentle but earnest. "I don't think anyone else could have handled it." Lyra smiled faintly. "I suppose it helps to have someone who believes you can." "That's exactly it," he replied. For the first time, Lyra felt a profound sense of purpose. She understood that being too much was not a weakness, but a gift, one that could shape the future, protect lives, and inspire others. With Elias by her side, she felt capable of facing any challenge, breaking any boundary, and redefining what it meant to be exceptional. And in that quiet moment, amidst the glowing city and the endless stars beyond, Lyra realized something even more remarkable. For the first time, she didn't feel alone. She had found someone who saw her not as too much, but as perfectly extraordinary. The aftermath of the asteroid incident left Zilara buzzing with energy and debate. Lyra's success had made headlines across the capital, with humans and Zilarians alike praising her ingenuity. Still, while many recognized her talent, the council remained divided. Some were impressed, others cautious, and a few outright dismissive, whispering that her achievements were lucky rather than skillful. Lyra had learned long ago that she could not control the opinions of others. What mattered now was what she knew to be true. She had made a difference, and she had a human who believed in her. Elias visited her lab the morning after the debrief. "You've inspired a lot of people," he said, scanning the screens filled with new calculations and blueprints. "Not just humans, some Zilarians are beginning to question their own assumptions." Lyra smiled faintly. "I don't expect everyone to change overnight. Some will never see the value in someone like me." "Then let them miss out," he replied simply. "You've already proven yourself to the ones who matter. And to me." The warmth in his tone made her markings pulse softly, a reflection of her quiet excitement. She had spent years hiding parts of herself, stifling her impulses and brilliance to fit into a society that demanded conformity. Now, she realized she no longer needed to dim her light. With Elias, she could be fully herself, and that was enough. Their focus soon returned to work. Reports from the Joint Human-Zilarian Research Station indicated that energy disturbances were occurring more frequently in certain sectors. Lyra hypothesized that the planet's energy grids were subtly destabilizing after the asteroid incident. If left unchecked, these disturbances could grow into storms similar to the one she had handled days earlier. Elias joined her in analyzing the data. "Your theory makes sense," he said. "We should create a network of modulators. But this time, we'll need to coordinate across multiple stations." Lyra nodded, appreciating his practical approach. Humans had a way of simplifying complexity, cutting through layers of hesitation and doubt. "It will be difficult," she admitted. "Many Zilarians will resist working outside their assigned sectors. They fear improvisation, deviation from protocols." Elias shrugged. "Then we make them see that innovation works. One successful demonstration will change more minds than 100 arguments." Together, they began planning a coordinated operation, mapping energy flow across the planet, assigning teams, and calculating the optimal placement for modulators. Lyra's knowledge of Zilarian technology, combined with Elias's human problem-solving, created a partnership that was both creative and efficient. The council sent observers, some skeptical, some curious, but none interfered directly, watching instead as Lyra directed the operation with calm authority. When the day of implementation arrived, the tension in the air was palpable. Teams moved through the city and outskirts, installing modulators while monitoring energy readings. Lyra's device acted as the central control, stabilizing fluctuations while allowing adaptive adjustments. As predicted, certain sectors resisted the flow of energy. Some Zilarian engineers hesitated, unsure of the untested method. Lyra approached each one, her voice firm but encouraging. showing them how their skills could work in harmony with her plan. Elias moved beside her, offering technical suggestions, translating her ideas for the human team, and reinforcing her confidence. The collaboration was seamless, a demonstration of what could happen when cultures worked together rather than against each other. Slowly, energy levels began to normalize across the sectors. Despite the success, not everyone was pleased. The conservative faction of the council voiced concern, questioning why a human had such influence over Xelarian operations. Lyra ignored the murmurs, focusing instead on the rising energy patterns. The final sector remained unstable, a small but dangerous anomaly. Lyra recalculated, integrating both Solarian and human techniques, and initiated a delicate adjustment sequence. The anomaly responded, stabilizing gradually, and soon the entire network hummed in perfect harmony. Lyra stepped back, exhausted but elated. Elias smiled, clapping her on the shoulder. "You did it." Again, Lyra allowed herself a rare moment of satisfaction. "We did it," she corrected, recognizing that their partnership had been essential. She looked around at the teams, noting the small nods of respect from Xelarian engineers. Some of them still avoided direct acknowledgement, but she could see their admiration in quiet glances and subtle gestures. Progress, she realized, often came slowly, through observation and understanding rather than immediate praise. As night fell, Lyra and Elias returned to the observation deck. The city glittered beneath them, lights reflecting off the crystalline towers. "You know," Elias said, "I think they're beginning to understand. They may not say it aloud yet, but they've seen what happens when someone like you leads." Lyra smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. "It's not about them," she said. "It's about proving to myself that my way of thinking has value, that I'm not too much to make a difference." Elias reached for her hand, a simple gesture that spoke volumes. "To me, you've never been too much. You've always been perfect, just as you are." Her markings glowed softly, a reflection of the joy she felt. For years, she had carried the weight of being seen as excessive, unwelcome, or misunderstood. Now, she understood that those labels were meaningless in the face of someone who truly recognized her worth. The following days brought more opportunities for Lyra to demonstrate her abilities. She led collaborative missions with both humans and Xelarians, stabilizing energy anomalies, improving infrastructure, and sharing knowledge. Each success strengthened her reputation, gradually eroding the skepticism of those who had doubted her. While some still resisted, others began to admire her determination and ingenuity. Lyra also found herself growing closer to Elias. Their partnership was not just professional, it had become personal. He admired her courage, her creativity, and the way she refused to compromise her essence for the comfort of others. She, in turn, valued his perspective, his empathy, and his unwavering belief in her abilities. They shared quiet moments of laughter and conversation, sometimes staying long after work to discuss theories, dreams, and the strange beauty of Xelara's night skies. One evening, as they watched the twin moons rise above the crystalline city, Elias turned to her. "You've changed a lot of minds," he said, "but more importantly, you've changed how I see the universe. People who are considered too much, they're the ones who shape the future." Lyra's markings shimmered, reflecting her emotions. "I never thought I'd find someone who could see me like that," she admitted. "Someone who doesn't just tolerate me, but actually understands me." "You did more than survive in a world that didn't always accept you," Elias said. For the first time, Lyra felt a sense of true belonging. She understood that perfection wasn't about meeting others' expectations. It was about embracing one's strengths, trusting one's instincts, and finding allies who could see the value in uniqueness. Elias was that ally, and together, they had begun to show Xelara that what was once considered too much could, in fact, be exactly what was needed. As the night deepened, Lyra returned to her lab, her mind buzzing with ideas. The work was far from over, and challenges would continue to arise. But for the first time, she faced the future not with doubt or fear, but with confidence and hope. The lessons she had learned, the power of courage, the importance of innovation, and the value of seeing and being seen, would guide her. And in the quiet glow of her lab, surrounded by the hum of machines and the soft pulse of her own light, Lyra finally felt whole. She was no longer just an outcast or a curiosity. She was a force, brilliant and unstoppable. And she had found someone who recognized that brilliance as perfectly extraordinary. The weeks that followed were a time of transformation for Lyra. Xelara itself seemed to shift around her. Subtle changes in the way people regarded her, the way her work was received, and the quiet acknowledgement of her brilliance. The council, still cautious, began to recognize the value in her methods as she successfully implemented energy stabilization projects across multiple sectors. Human allies like Elias remained steadfast, supporting her ideas and helping her navigate both technical and social challenges. Lyra had grown accustomed to the rhythm of this new life, a mixture of creation, collaboration, and cautious acceptance. Yet she knew that real change was measured not by one person's opinion, but by the gradual understanding of many. In the labs and control centers, whispers of admiration grew louder, and engineers who had once doubted her ideas now sought her guidance. The label of being too much to love had lost its sting. It had been replaced, in some eyes, with respect, and in others, curiosity about her unorthodox methods. One day, a delegation from a neighboring Zelaren city arrived, eager to learn from Lyra. She guided them through her work with calm confidence, demonstrating the precise adjustments required to stabilize the energy networks. Elias observed from nearby, quietly explaining human approaches when needed. Lyra noted the subtle shift in the visitors' expressions, from skepticism to fascination, and finally, to admiration. She realized that her work was not just about machines and energy. It was about changing perceptions and inspiring others to embrace their own strengths. As the delegation prepared to leave, one of the engineers spoke quietly. "Your approach, it is bold. We see now that risk can lead to progress. You have shown us what it means to trust oneself." Lyra smiled, feeling the warmth of genuine acknowledgement. These were small victories, perhaps, but each one added to the sense that she belonged in a world that had once seemed closed to her. Even with her professional successes, Lyra's personal connection with Elias deepened. They spent more time together outside of work, exploring the glowing forests of Zelara, discussing possibilities beyond technology, and sharing stories of their respective worlds. Elias had a way of seeing the extraordinary in the ordinary, and Lyra had never met anyone who could appreciate her quirks, her intensity, and her restless energy so fully. One evening, while walking along a cliffside overlooking a river of luminescent water, Elias stopped and turned to her. "Lyra, I want you to know something," he said softly. "All these people, all this recognition, it's deserved, but none of it compares to how remarkable I think you are as a person. You've never needed to change for anyone. You've always been perfect in your own way." Lyra's markings glowed gently, a sign of emotion she could no longer hide. "It's strange," she admitted. "For so long, I thought being too much was a flaw. Now I see that it's what makes me, me, and it's what allows me to help others see things differently." He took her hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. "Exactly. And I'm glad I'm the one who saw it first." No. Their bond was no longer tentative. It was a partnership built on respect, admiration, and shared experiences. It had grown in the crucible of high-stakes challenges and collaborative innovation, solidifying into something neither of them had expected, but both valued deeply. Lyra finally understood that she could be loved, not despite her intensity, but because of it. The Council, witnessing repeated successes and growing collaboration between humans and Zilarians under Lyra's guidance, began to formally recognize her contributions. A ceremony was held in the central hall of the capital, where her achievements were highlighted in front of dignitaries, engineers, and scientists from across the planet. Lyra stood tall, Elias beside her, as the council members spoke. Some still hesitated, careful with their words, but the acknowledgement was real. Applause filled the hall, and for the first time in her life, Lyra felt that she had truly been seen. After the ceremony, Lyra and Elias returned to the observation deck. A quiet space where the city stretched below them in all its radiant beauty. "It's strange," Lyra said, gazing at the shimmering towers. "For so long, I felt invisible or too much. Now, it feels like I can finally breathe." Elias smiled, squeezing her hand gently. "You've always been visible, Lyra. You just needed someone willing to see you the way you deserve. And now, the world is starting to see it too." She leaned against him, allowing herself a rare moment of peace. For years, she had carried the burden of judgment and isolation, struggling to fit into molds that were never meant for her. That struggle had shaped her, yes, but it had also taught her resilience, creativity, and the courage to stand alone when necessary. With Elias, she realized that she did not need to stand alone anymore. Their future was filled with possibilities. Lyra envisioned new projects, further collaboration between humans and Zilarians, and missions that could explore the boundaries of both technology and diplomacy. She imagined traveling to human colonies, sharing her knowledge, and learning more about their ways. More than that, she imagined a life where her intensity and curiosity were not constraints, but celebrated qualities. One night, while overseeing a new energy grid installation, Lyra paused to look at the twin moons rising over Xalara. Elias joined her silently, his presence comforting. She reflected on the journey she had taken from the girl labeled "too much to love" to a woman whose brilliance and courage were acknowledged across worlds. She had faced doubt, fear, and prejudice, but she had never compromised who she was. And in doing so, she had found both purpose and love. "You've changed everything," Elias said quietly, breaking her reverie. "Not just the planet, not just the council, but the way people will think about what it means to be exceptional." Lyra smiled, feeling the pulse of energy around her, the hum of machines, and the glow of the city beneath them. "Perhaps being too much isn't a curse after all," she said. "Perhaps it's exactly what the universe needs." Elias laughed softly. "I think it is, and you've shown me that too. You've taught me to see beyond fear and doubt, to value strength, courage, and creativity, no matter how unconventional." She turned to him, her eyes reflecting the shimmering lights. "Thank you, Elias, for seeing me, for believing in me, and for standing beside me when no one else would." He smiled, brushing a strand of glowing hair from her face. "There is no one else I would rather stand beside." The stars above seemed to shine brighter that night, reflecting the glow of possibility, understanding, and acceptance. Lyra had not only proven her worth to the world but had also discovered the rare joy of being understood and cherished by someone who valued her completely. She had been too much to love, the world had said, but she knew the truth now. She had simply been waiting for the right eyes to see her as perfect. With Elias by her side, the universe seemed less daunting, more inviting, and infinitely full of promise. Lyra knew that challenges would come, as they always did. But she faced them with renewed strength, courage, and the unwavering knowledge that being fully herself was not only enough, it was extraordinary. And in that realization, amidst the hum of her inventions, the glow of the city, and the companionship of the human who truly saw her, Lyra finally felt complete. She had found her place in the universe, not by changing who she was, but by embracing it fully. and in doing so, she had shown others that being too much could be the very thing that made someone unforgettable. The future stretched out before her, limitless and bright, and for the first time, Lyra was ready to embrace it entirely.